In 2001, the LEGO Group released a new sub-theme of buildable action figures called Bionicle. Due to a heavy focus on internet-oriented promotional materials, the toy line quickly developed a massive online following. Fan websites and forums began to pop up where people could discuss the various concepts, stories, and characters of the Bionicle universe. But less than a year after Bionicle's release, a series of leaks appeared on these forums that claimed a seventh protagonist, called a Toa, would be arriving the following year. This seventh Toa, named Variki, would change the future of the Bionicle toy line forever. Fans became ecstatic, eagerly awaiting the release of this new character. But what they didn't realize was that it was all fake. There was no Voriki. Those massive changes would never come in the way they'd been rumored. And yet, 20 years later, Voriki is still popular. He's still brought up almost daily by the same fans that he fooled all those years ago. And at this point, the question must be made. Why? This is the story of a fan-made character that became a hoax. A hoax that became an icon. And an icon that, in a way, became the embodiment of the fans that popularized it. This is the story of Voriki, the seventh Toa.
He's a very interesting phenomenon in the Bionicle community because we have had things like leak and like things like that, but he was the first one and probably the most interesting.
He feels like a digital version of all those playground rumors that were like, as a kid, like Voriki kind of reminds me of that. He kind of feels like that playground rumor, like he feels like in that same energy except in online.
As far as I know, Voriki may have been the first fake Bionicle leak, at least the first viral one.
I think a lot of Bionicle fans have so many memories of Bionicle that have cemented in with them, because so many fans have been there since 2001. I know a lot of people that got in around 2004 when the movies came out and stuff like that, but so many people have been with Bionicle from the beginning, so it just makes sense that something would stick with them. If it was a big event like it was on BZ Power, that Bionicle forum, like it makes sense that people would remember it.
On May 1st, 2001, the LEGO Group opened up a challenge called the Build Your Own Bionicle website contest. As the title suggests, the contest encouraged fans of Bionicle to create a website showcasing an aspect of the franchise. Many fans entered this contest, exploring the island of Motunui, elaborating on the rich lore of the series, or diving deeper into the main characters of the series. The Toa, 6 elemental warriors sworn to protect the island of Motunui and its inhabitants from the evil Makuta. But one entry, created by a fan known simply as Bionicle 7, took a very different approach. Though they did showcase one of the Toa, it wasn't one of the 6 official ones fans were familiar with. Instead, Bionicle 7 created their own Toa, who they called Variki, Toa of Energy.
But I remember there was a website for it just specifically. That's where I saw all these images that were clearly photoshopped, but of course 6-year-old me didn't know that at the time.
This website dug deep into Variki's supposed lore, explaining how he had been stored away on a star until it aligned with his island home, allowing him to finally join his brothers and sister in their battle against Makuta. To accompany this story were several photoshopped images, blended together from various promotional materials to create an entirely new character. Bionicle 7 had, in their attempts to enter a contest, created one of the first recorded Bionicle original characters. However, on September 24th, 2001, the contest was closed. And unfortunately, Bionicle 7 had lost. The Variki website had failed to garner any acclaim from judges, and would seemingly be lost to time. This should have marked the end of Variki. His job was finished. He had lost. And yet, Historical records of this time are fuzzy, to say the least. Due to an archival data breach in 2015, much of the Bionicle fandom's early history has been lost. But what we do know is this. Somehow, before the contest had even concluded, Bionicle 7's website made its way onto the leading Bionicle fan forum, BZ Community, which would later become known as BZ Power. Except the website didn't arrive on the forums as a celebration of fan creativity. Instead, this website and all the accompanying story elements and doctored images were presented as leaks. Fans believed that Variki was real. They believed a 7th Toa would be arriving soon, and that this website proved it. Although some were able to see these supposed leaks for what they were, many truly believed that this character was an official LEGO creation.
Back then, I was one of the first people to hear about Voriki. I saw it on BZ Power, which is a Bionicle forum website, and I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I was 6 years old, so of course I fell for it. And I remember even distinctly telling my mom about it. I was like, "Mom, you're not gonna believe this! Oh my god, they're coming out with the 7th Toa!"
A lot of kids' media really have those kinds of characters, those later heroes who join later on and became have this big deal. So it kind of made sense for Bionicle to have its own 7th hero, another Toa who would come later on. And it really blew up because people believed that this was the 7th Toa, that this was a new hero because of all these patterns in kids' media. This wasn't uncommon.
Eventually, one of the leading Bionicle news sites, Mask of Destiny, reached out to LEGO for comment. For obvious reasons, they denied having any connections to Variki. Furthermore, during this time, word of Variki's popularity made its way back to Bionicle 7, who created an account on the forums in September, seemingly desperate to quell any rumors about Variki's origins. They even attempted to explain Variki's beginnings in the website contest in a now-deleted forum post. And, of course, that should have been the end of it. Though Variki may have had a brief stint as the supposed 7th Toa, LEGO's confirmation of his invalidity, combined with the clear statements from his creator, should have shut down any discussion of the character once and for all. Variki had no purpose anymore. Not as the subject of a contest submission, and not as the leaked 7th Toa. And yet, even after Variki was exposed by the very person that created him, fans continued to celebrate the character. Some users on the forums began dedicating their accounts to discussions about Variki, while one person in particular even went so far as to create an account for the character. Fan art began to appear, people began to use him in roleplay and fanfiction, and the jokes about this hoax continued to be brought up. Though his popularity dwindled over time, the character maintained a reputation within the community as the unofficial 7th Toa. That is, until another 7th Toa arrived. In late 2002, rumors once again began to appear on the forums claiming that a 7th Toa, this time named Takanuva, would be coming the following year. The only difference between Voriki and Takanuva, of course, was that Takanuva turned out to be real.
I would honestly say that not only Takanuva's appearance, but also the transformation of the Toa Mata into the Toa Nuva changed everything for Variki.
Sure enough, 2003 heralded the story of Takanuva, Toa of Light. He starred in his own Bionicle film, got his own set, and was fully incorporated into the larger Bionicle story as a whole. Naturally, in the wake of this new character, there came new discussions of Variki's relevance in the community. But as the reality of Takanuva's presence became more pronounced, Variki began to be tossed to the wayside.
Oh, I think everybody completely forgot about Variki once Takanuva and the 7th Toa was revealed. I think he was completely old news. Once the movie was announced and once everything came together for 2003, I believe Variki was completely a forgotten memory.
Variki had not only been discredited, but dethroned. Was there even a place for him in the fandom anymore? Soon enough, people began to look back on Variki in frustration. He had been a hoax. He wasn't necessary anymore. It certainly didn't help that when newer fans attempted to find out more about a rumored 7th Toa, much of what they were met with was a fake leak from years ago.
In 2002, hints of a 7th Toa, Takanuva, went worldwide. Everyone tried to dig up information and found Variki. Bionicle 7, who quickly told everyone he could about how he had invented Variki for fun, was in huge trouble. By February 2003, almost everybody had heard of the site. By 2004, Voriki was all but despised. Millions got their hopes up, millions were disappointed.
In response, one fan made their very own website dedicated to exploring the in-universe and real-world story of Variki, and supposedly even sold custom-made Variki sets at some point. But unfortunately, even this wasn't enough to keep Variki from falling into obscurity. And for years, that's where the character lay. Every so often, a new piece of fan art would pop up, or someone would bring up the character again in fanfiction or community discussions. But very little happened during this time. Variki's reign was finally over. It seemed that he would be doomed to wallow in obscurity forever. And unfortunately, it wouldn't be long before he had company. The Bionicle franchise itself. On November 24th, 2009, the LEGO Group announced that they would be canceling the Bionicle toy line. One more wave of sets would be released, the story would be wrapped up, and then that would be it. Bionicle would be dead. There were a lot of reactions to this news, to say the least. But perhaps one of the most fascinating ones was the sudden influx of nostalgic reflection. Many fans that had been around since the beginning began to reminisce about the good old days, back when Bionicle's story was as simple as 6 heroes fighting the embodiment of chaos on an island. And during these discussions, Voriki was once again brought up. People began to remember him again, and with the passing of time and the context of Bionicle's end, they didn't seem to look back on him in frustration anymore. But unfortunately, reminiscing about a character that never existed changed little for Bionicle's fate. In 2010, the last sets were released, and that was that. Bionicle, and Voriki with it, were over. And yet... This is Greg Farshtey. In 2001, he was tasked with writing the Bionicle promotional comic books. By 2003, he was writing both the comics and the chapter books. Over the next couple of years, he also became involved in the story serials, games, and even the movies themselves. And all the while, he made sure to have time for the community. He'd often host open Q&As where fans could ask him whatever they wanted about the Bionicle franchise. He used these Q&As to talk about his writing process, to clean up continuity in the lore, and even to add on to that continuity altogether. When Bionicle was cancelled, LEGO gave Greg permission to continue adding on to the canon, writing more story serials and answering more Q&As. And he did so for many years, keeping the community active and engaged long after the series had ended. And it was in one of these Q&As that the unthinkable happened. Voriki became canon. Well, kinda. Okay, not really. For context, every character in Bionicle is affiliated with some kind of element, and each of these elements has an associated prefix that's often used to determine the elemental affiliation of various tools, towns, and groups. For example, the element of fire uses the prefix Ta, which can be found in Ta Koro, the Fire Village, Ta Matoran, the Villagers of Fire, Ta Wahi, the Fire Region, and so on and so forth. On top of this, the original 6 Toa from 2001 all have names beginning with their elemental prefix. Using that same example, the Toa of Fire was named Tahu. All this is important because in 2012, Greg Farshtey was asked what the elemental prefix for lightning was. His answer? Vo. Vo as in Vo Koro, Vo Matoran, Vo Wahi, Variki. In no time at all, fans began to connect the prefix back to the character. Even though Greg claimed the prefix came from the word volts, nothing seemed to be able to stop fans from claiming this canonized Variki. And though this certainly didn't make him an official part of the lore, some fans seem to appreciate that in a small way, a tiny piece of Variki's legacy had become canon.
They don't have the same color scheme, so that this probably isn't true, but I wouldn't be surprised if in some small part, Voriki inspired the story team to officially introduce electricity or lightning into the series.
Not only that, but this sudden influx in Voriki discussions led new fans to learn about the character for the first time, which only furthered his legacy. And this newfound rise in popularity was only increased when the unthinkable happened. Bionicle came back. In 2014, LEGO announced that after a 4-year hiatus, the series would be rebooted the following year, and sure enough, 2015 brought new Bionicle sets, a new storyline, and, of course, new Variki jokes. Within moments of promotional images for these new sets being released, fans were already photoshopping the characters into Variki. That certainly helped that Anua, whose mask served as the basis for Variki's in 2001, now had more purple built into his set design, which only perpetuated the jokes.
As a joke, I made some of my own fake G2 pictures and stuff like that. Like, and I posted it to social media. Like, it was, I guarantee you, if you search like Bionicle G2 leaks or something, one of my photos will come up that I made in Photoshop.
When the 2015 Bionicle animations were released, people began to draw up designs for Variki's new look in that same art style.
I believe it was around 2015-16 on the TTV message boards, or perhaps BZ Power, when someone made fan art of Voriki in the 2015 animation style. I later looked up Voriki and realized he was a lot older than expected.
New animations began to arise, new fan art, new memes. One person even created a 3D model of Variki's mask and spear, making it possible to at long last create a physical version of the character. Now, of course, this popularity eventually began to subside as the actual sets began to be released. Variki had had a good bit of fun, but surely it was time to move on to the rest of what this new series had to offer. And yet, just a few months after the release of these new sets, something would happen that would send Variki's fame into the stratosphere. Something that would make every resurgence in popularity pale in comparison. Something that would change the course of Variki's history forever, and would truly turn him into a household name.
I was into Bionicle when I was younger, but I was like less than 1 year old in 2001. So I didn't hear about Voriki until Reviving Bionicle by SuddenlyOranges.
On August 15th, 2013, YouTuber SuddenlyOranges released a short film titled Reviving Bionicle. In it, sentient Bionicle sets attempted to resurrect the series, which had been cancelled 3 years ago by that point.
Even though it was 3 years after Bionicle ended, like I said, it's been an important part of my life, so I really wanted to make a tribute to that somehow.
The film achieved quite a bit of success, and with the announcement of Bionicle's reboot, it only seemed natural for SuddenlyOranges to make a sequel, which was released on January 9th, 2015.
Yeah, I felt like I kind of had to make something because it was coming out. I felt like, okay, Bionicle's coming back. There should be some sort of a sequel because it's my way. It's like my love letter to Bionicle, so I wanted to continue that somehow.
But it's in the third installment of this series, the 5-part story Reviving Bionicle 3, where things began to change. Not only was this chapter in the Reviving Bionicle saga on a much larger scale than its predecessors, but it also introduced a new protagonist, Variki.
It was one of those eureka moments, you know? It was like, oh man, you know what would be really cool if I took this goofy character, you know, kind of like Good Guy, and gave him a purpose in a weird way. Like, I tried to make it a little more deep and a little more meaningful than just a joke.
In Reviving Bionicle, Variki was introduced as an anomaly. By all accounts, he truly was just a hoax, a fake leak perpetuated back in 2001. Yet his very presence seemed to counteract that. But throughout the story, it became increasingly clear that Variki was fake. He was nothing more than a fake hero created by the antagonists of the series to cause confusion and prohibit others from learning the truth.
And the way that they looked at Variki's character in Reviving Bionicle is super compelling. Like, I believe that the Hero Factory characters referred to the Variki in that series as a hero who could save nobody. And that's like really interesting because Bionicle as a larger series is about heroes who can save everybody. But if we have Variki there and we give him this kind of aspect of a hero who can save nobody, then that's super interesting to me.
But in the end, Variki does become a true hero, sacrificing himself to save none other than Takanuva, the real 7th Toa. And in doing so, Variki proves once and for all that although he may not have been created to be real, he earned that right through his own actions. Reviving Bionicle dramatically shifted the tone around Variki. Not only was this some of the most concrete and compelling characterization fans had gotten for him, but it also propelled him into even greater popularity. Due to the success of the Reviving Bionicle series, placing Variki front and center did nothing but introduce new fans to the character and cement his place in the fandom.
Like, we see Voriki in Reviving Bionicle being a kind of, like, a kind of really important character to that lore, that series of lore, and that's probably what inspired people the most to, like, bring Voriki back in any, like, large way.
It wasn't the start, obviously. It wasn't the start of his popularity, because he was still around. But I do think that's kind of what skyrocketed it and put it in the Bionicle community's line of sight.
He was undeniably a massive presence in the community from here on out. Unfortunately, another shift in the community would happen at almost the exact same time. Just a few months after the final part of Reviving Bionicle 3 was released, the LEGO Group announced that they would be canceling Bionicle. Again. Reactions were far more mixed this time. Some celebrated the death of a reboot they'd seen as inferior. Others saw this as the ultimate final death of the franchise, and more still simply felt nothing. They'd seen all this before. They knew there was nothing they could do. Bionicle was dead for a second time. And Variki? Where did that put him? This was a period of turmoil within the Bionicle community. It seemed as though Variki couldn't possibly have a place during all this. And yet, if you've been paying attention, you already know what happens next.
Bionicle isn't done just because the sets are done, just because the story was cancelled and Greg wasn't able to finish his serials. Bionicle isn't done because there's still so much to explore, so much to discuss, so much to create.
Fans continued to create things with him. More fanfiction, more fan art, more 3D models and animations, and even various pitches on how to incorporate him into Bionicle canon. One fan made a mod for the video game Skyrim that made Variki a playable character. Another incorporated him into a comic book parody of The Suicide Squad. He's been put on t-shirts, stickers, and all kinds of merchandise. Fans have rebuilt and revamped the original design for the character. Variki has only gotten more and more popular within the community over time. And it's not just Variki either. It's been 5 years since Bionicle's second cancellation, but the fandom has continued to fill the void left by official content by simply making their own. Multiple movies have been made by dedicated fans, and several video games, and comic books, and new character designs, and so much more. As if the community collectively got up and said, well, if LEGO won't continue Bionicle, we will. And in the mix of it all is Variki. A 20-year-old character made for a long-ended website contest and turned into a hoax. To this day, new things are constantly being created with Variki. And that leads us back to the original question. Why? Why Variki? Why this blatantly fake and unintentional hoax from 20 years ago? Why has the community, more than any other character of his kind, latched onto him? And why do they still celebrate him all this time later?
I think it has to do with the medium of Bionicle and LEGO as a whole. The parts are there to create what's on the tin, but you don't need instructions to have fun. You're inspired and encouraged to tell your own stories and create your own characters and lore. That's one of the things I love about Bionicle.
Voriki, to me, represents the creativity of the Bionicle community. Because system fans, they'll often attack Bionicle saying, oh, you can't do so much with Bionicle that you can do with system. But I feel like that's very wrong. Voriki as a concept is very interesting. Like, especially in the Bionicle community, because Bionicle is all about creativity. Like, we have people making self-mock and then giving these self-mocks, like, characters and abilities. And Variki was, like, I would say a template for the self-mock, or just the fan character in general.
I think Voriki kind of like represents the community at large, mainly being the creativity and how like Bionicle community really gets attached to the most minor things, the most minor characters, like makes a lot out of it. We basically take the canon as a large canvas and play with it. Bionicle definitely has one of the largest transformative communities and most creative communities I can think of. Like, it has like all these building blocks, and we fans explore the world, and I feel that's why so many people are latched to it. Voriki kind of in a sense reflects on that, reflects on how much the fandom really loves to explore and create things, how much we like take the randomest thing and the most random insignificant character, the most random plot element, and want to explore it, want to like understand what it means, want to create on it. Voriki being this like bleak Toa is a reason why Voriki lives on, because he really embodies that idea of taking something and making something more of it. Like, he is a blank slate.
It's because the community is super creative. Like, there's so much that Bionicle has done for kids, and so much that they have started, all because of Bionicle. I think they did that because they're just full of such cool people that were inspired. It makes sense that the community would take something, whether it's an existing character or a fake character, and made something out of it, because that's just their nature. I think he is just a wonderful symbol of the Bionicle community being itself, and that makes me just pretty happy.
A lot of you guys are Bionicle fans, many from way back. It's no secret that you are some of the smartest, most loyal, and most dedicated fans out there. You, and you alone, have carried the torch for the line over the last 4 years. Regardless, I wanted to take this opportunity to say that I am really proud to be associated with you, and you should be really proud of yourselves.
The truth is, more than any other character, real or fake, Variki's legacy is entirely defined by the creative fans that have continued to find new and exciting ways to use him. Artists have made him the subject of their works. Programmers have modded him into video games. He's been included in fan fiction, revamped into fan sets, written into short films, and so much more. For these fans, Variki's illegitimacy isn't a detriment, it's an opportunity to make something new. He isn't real, but all that means is that his history consists entirely of person after person taking this character, redefining what he is, and doing something amazing with him. Even his original creator, Bionicle 7, fits into that idea. After all, Variki was made as an original character by a Bionicle fan who thought it would be more fun to do something original than to talk about the canon stuff, and who had no idea what their creation would become. And in that way, Variki has come to represent the community as a whole, the dedicated, creative, brilliant fans who can take any element of this series, even the unofficial stuff, and turn it into something incredible. Because both Variki and Bionicle as a whole should have died a long time ago. Their creators stopped being involved, and new official content with them stopped being released. And yet, the fans don't care. They've made their own content, become involved in lieu of the creators of the things they hold dearly. And because of that, neither Bionicle nor Variki will ever truly end. They'll never reach a point where nothing new was ever created with them. And ultimately, that's why. That's why fans have remained so dedicated to a 20-year-old hoax. Why they've made memes, art, comics, games, and so much more in honor of these characters. Variki isn't real. But that was never the point. He's real to us. And that's all that matters.